Hello, I am Dylan Stevens. This second lecture in this series is called The Secret Enneagram of Gurdjieff and its relationship to universal vortex math. In geometry, an enneagram is a 9-pointed plane figure. Its prefix, ennea, is Greek for 9. It can be created by 3 equilateral triangles shifted 40 degrees. It is interesting that the figure of the enneagram here has become the symbol of Gurdjieff, similar to Jesus and the cross, and yet Gurdjieff made no mention of it in his trilogy, All and Everything, Beelzebub's Tales to his Grandson, Meetings with Remarkable Men, and the shell of the third series. The enneagram comes originally from P.D. Ouspensky's In Search of the Miraculous, chapter 14. Where Gurdjieff gave the lecture showing this symbol. This was before the founding of the Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man in Fontainebleau and the writing of Beelzebub's Tales. Since then it has been expanded upon by millions of people as a tool of so-called spiritual advancement. A huge industry has evolved from the study of its intersecting lines, specifically in the mapping of 9 personality types arbitrarily chosen, and their interactions. Many have become rich giving presentations, drawing diagrams, and acting as therapists in these studies that have become synonymous with the Enneagram, called the Enneagram of Personality by Wikipedia, which was lifted from Gurdjieff by Oscar Ichazo and Helen Palmer. The fourth-way Enneagram in Wikipedia plays second fiddle to it now, but it should be correctly called the Gurdjieff Enneagram. The so-called scientific studies of the fourth-way Enneagram that try to predict events by using the 6 vectors of the repeating decimal seem to be no more useful than games of chance. Astrology already has 12 types, but they are of essence, whereas the 9 types in the Enneagram of Personality seek to map the personality. The personality is merely the artificial structure that we create to shield our essence from the world. Ultimately, this study of personalities is a complete waste of time in the building of a soul, which is built upon essence. It is possible that this knowledge could be useful in the manipulation of others who do not have a clue that they have an essence, but clearly serves no purpose to one's spiritual growth. This brings to mind the statement from Beelzebub's Tales, chapter 41. The Bokharian dervish Haji Asvaz Truth, page 871 and 2. One day we started talking about what is called there the ancient Chinese science called Sat Chai Murnis. This science is nothing but fragments of the above-mentioned totality of true information concerning the sacred Heptaparapashnak, cognized by the great Chinese twin brothers and by other genuine ancient scientists, and then called by them the totality of the true information about the law of ninefoldness. I have already told you that certain fragments of this knowledge remained intact and passed from generation to generation through a very limited number of initiated beings there. I must here say that if these fragments, which have by chance remained intact, and which have passed and are still passing there from generation to generation through this very limited number of initiated beings, do not fall in the hands of the contemporary, quote, scientists there, and it will be a great stroke of luck, because if these surviving fragments of genuine knowledge were to fall into the hands of the contemporary, quote, scientists there, then thanks to their inherency of wiseacring, they would without fail cook up all kinds of their scientific porridge about the sense put into these fragments. And thereby without this, scarcely smoldering reason of all the other 3 brain beings would be entirely extinguished, and besides, these last remnants of the former great attainments of their ancestors would thereby be almost completely wiped off the face of this ill-fated planet. When I read this excerpt, I said to myself, this must be a mistake, and it should be 7-foldness. as in the lore of Heptaparapashnak, especially in the context of the 7 notes in the octave. If it was meant to be the one and only reference to the 9 points of the enneagram, it is strange, since the unique figure really consists of 7 points that directly relate to the repeating decimal, being the division by 7. The other 2 points are from the inner triangle, which is often left out. It is much more likely that the mentioned law of ninefoldness refers to something more complex than the enneagram, and was not known by Gurdjieff at the time of his writing. This law of ninefoldness most likely refers to the recently discovered, or shall I say remembered, vortex math that will be demonstrated in this lecture. In vortex math, the number 9 has a unique relationship. For example, one of the properties of 9 is that when it is added to any number, it gives the same base number. 1 plus 9 equals 10, which reduces to 1 plus 0, which equals 1. 8 plus 9 equals 17. Add the digits 1 and 7, and you have 8, which was the original digit you started with. 12,345. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 15 equals 6. Now we take 12,345 and add 9 to it. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5, 4. We have 15. 1 and 5 equals 6. It's important to note that the process of reduction used here and throughout this presentation is to add all digits greater than 9 together to demonstrate their essence as 1 through 9. This is a common practice in numerology. The law of ninefoldness has many other amazing features, such as perpetual motion, as I will show. Disappointingly, Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, Chapter 6, Perpetual Motion, does not reveal this secret, except to describe the spaceship that they are traveling in as an analogy of being Padog duty. In Chapter 41, the excerpt of Gurdjieff as Beelzebub, mentioning the law of ninefoldness, is unfortunately lost in a tangential story on the effect of sound vibrations on the physical body that is clearly about his failure to prevent his wife's death from cancer. If Gurdjieff had access to the concepts of vortex math as presented by Marco Rodin, 1911 to 2007, he could have elaborated further on the Enneagram and even shown the mathematical derivation by vortex math of what he calls the Nireunas-Nusian world sound, as described in the lore of Heptaparapashnak, Chapter 40, as being just that sound, the vibrations of which have been taken from ancient times, and even at the present time there is still taken. It is true for a very small number of your favorites, of course of this same China, for their sound-producing instruments has the absolute vibrations of the note Do. The Gurdjieff Enneagram, as shown to Ouspensky, is formed by this mathematical, elegant process. Mark 9 points on a circle numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with 9 at the top. Divide the numbers 1 through 6 by 7 for the law of sevenfoldness. 1 divided by 7, 2 divided by 7, 3 divided by 7, 4 divided by 7, 5 divided by 7, 6 divided by 7, giving 0.142857, 142,857, 142,857. The next number is 0.285714, and it repeats itself 285714, etc. So all of these results contain the same repeating decimal. Draw a line connecting these numbers on the circle. Note that the repeating decimal numbers, when added together, equal 9. The missing numbers 3, 6, and 9 can be connected to form an inner triangle with its apex at the top, and thus the famous symbol appears. We will see that vortex math has a similar triangle where 3 and 6 continually swap places. And there is do, re, mi, fa, so, la, si, which is really T in the modern music form, on the piano. More importantly, in the assignment of the 7 positions of the octave as follows: re is assigned to position 1, mi to position 2, fa to position 4, sol to position 5, la to position 7, ti to position 8. The apex of the triangle at 9 is then do, to represent the lower do and its completion at the higher do. Thus the Gurdjieff Enneagram incorporates the law of 7, Heptaparapashnak, the law of 3, Tiramazi Kamno, the law of ninefoldness, the sacred law of 6, the inner lines, and the law of 12, the intersection of these lines with the inner triangle. Here is the Gurdjieff Enneagram with all possible lines shown within it in yellow and green with notes assigned. In my first lecture, the key to the soul is within the missing stoppender of the food octave. I ignore the inner lines and use only the notes and the triangle of the Enneagram to prove that a substance is missing at La in the food octave, in chapter 39 of Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, and conjecture what this substance is. One author, Richard J. Defoe, in his book The Enneagram in the Writings of Gurdjieff, being one of the few that acknowledged the missing substance La, sets out to show that La was intentionally left out in order to demonstrate the action of the vectors in the Enneagram. He supports this by showing that Beelzebub's 6 voyages to the earth and other processes in that book follow the Enneagram order, even though he agrees that the Enneagram was not explicitly mentioned. His interpretation of the Enneagram process is of interest, even though I believe that my solution of the missing law is simpler. On page 78, Richard shows a map of dancers performing a pas de deux. I was intrigued by this and built the following animation, which follows the spirit of Richard's diagram of 6 systems. One dancer in the middle is a pivot point for the other dancer, who is moved from the point on the right to the point on the left, with the left dancer becoming the pivot point for the next set. For the dancers, I used the angel and the devil from the cover design of the Prospectus of the Gurdjieff Institute 1919. Technically, the angel is supposed to represent the passive force and the devil the active force. In my figure, they are swapping natures alternatively. The devil and the angel pull each other around the circle. In the dance, I show the angel walking from La to Ti to allow for the problem of the missing La in the food octave. Other than that, the diagrams match the authors. Here are the 6 sets of pas de deux. First of all, the angel is at note T, the devil is at Do, and he pulls the angel to note Re. And as you'll see in the diagram, it's the part of the Enneagram that goes 8, 5, 7, 1 that controls this action. In the next step, the devil is at Do, and the angel is at Re, and the angel pulls the devil to note Mi. And this action happens from the line of the triangle. The next one, the Enneagram lines of 1 and 4 control the action. And the next one, it's the bottom triangle that controls the action. And in the next one, it's the Enneagram of 4, 2, and 8 that control the action. And in the final one, the devil is on Sol and the angel is on La. And in this case, the triangle moves the angel up to T. And this is the problem of the missing La in the food octave. And you will see basically the angel walks from La to T. So although it works, it is flawed. Here is the action. You can watch it for a little while here. I think it's really cute. Now Richard wrote me back about the above dances that I created. It is pretty but misleading. To see why it is misleading, recall that the angel and the devil represent good and evil. That is, the passive and the active forces. The dancer who is being swung ahead is playing the passive role, and therefore should always be represented by the angel. But it looks like you have the angel and the devil taking turns being swung or ahead. Actually, it would be better not to use the angel and the devil to represent the dancers at all, since that just confuses the two dualities. One duality consists of the hexagon cycle and the triangle cycle, the two dancers. And the other duality consists of the passive and active forces, the angel and the devil. He agrees that law certainly exists, but is not the result of Honel Nia Tisnel. Law is Pangyohari that has moved to the place of Exiohari. Only after this move does another process of Honel Miastol take place, converting the moved Pangyohari into Exiohari. Then he says, see the end of section 1.5, quote 5.6, the paragraph that follows it. What is cool is that this two-step process. Pangyohari first moves, then is converted into Exiohari by Honel Nia Tisnel. Occurs at exactly that phase of the six-phase cycle that seems to pass over an extra note. This is because each phase of the cycle corresponds to a process of Honel Miasol. So La doesn't get its own enneagram. So there it is. So now we move on to the Marko-Rodin vortex, which he claims describes all energy processes, and its derivation is similar to the Gurdjieff enneagram, so it makes sense to compare it. The Marko-Rodin vortex begins like the enneagram with a circle with numbers 1 through 9. It is built by doubling and reducing and by adding the digits of the number over 9. A series of numbers 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 reduced to 7, 32 reduced to 5, 64 reduced to 1 is formed in a different way than the Gurdjieff enneagram. So starting with 1 doubled equals 2 shows the line is drawn from 1 to 2. 2 doubled equals 4 shows the line is drawn from 2 to 4. 4 doubled equals 8 shows the line is drawn from 4 to 8. 8 doubled is 16, which then reduces to 7, thus shows the line is drawn from 8 to 7. 7, which was 16, doubled is 32, which reduces it to 5, thus shows the line drawn from 7 to 5. 5, which was 32, and doubled is 64, which reduces to 10, which reduces to 1, thus the line is drawn from 5 to 1. The triangle points have a unique quality that when added or multiplied connect with the other triangle points. At point 3, 3 plus 3 connects with 6, and 3 times 3 connects with 9. At point 6, 6 plus 6 equals 12, reduces to 3, thus connects with 3. 6 times 6 equals 36, which reduces to 9, which connects to 9. Imagining a line drawn from 9 at the top of the vertex or apex to the middle of the bottom line demonstrates the horizontal symmetry which divides the circle into mirrored halves. Looking across then, you see 8 plus 1 equals 9. You see 2 plus 7 equals 9. 6 plus 3 equals 9. And 5 plus 4 equals 9. Now what is interesting is that you can take this vortex, moving one of the lines, and you can create the Gurdjieff enneagram. When we overlay these two diagrams, we see that there is a similarity in design and function. A major difference is the fact that the Enneagram line crosses at the top and the vortex line crosses at the bottom. Then you should note that the Markov vortex also works by halving. You can divide by 2 instead of multiplying by 2, and then you get the same figure except that the lines are in a different direction. So clearly the vortex and the Enneagram are related. As we will delve deeper into vortex math, we will find that it is a gold mine of mathematical derivations. There are certainly critics of the vortex math presented by Marco Rodin. They claim that it is an obvious result of the base 10 mathematical system and point out that it will not work for any other base number systems. This is, however, an absurd complaint, as we have 10 fingers and toes and we count by 10. Also, there have been experiments performed that appear to show that free energy, or at least enhanced energy, can be produced using the Rodin coil. Nikola Tesla, 1856-1943, the famous inventor, is known for the quote, "If only you knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, then you would have the key to the universe." Here is Tesla's map to multiplication, composites, and primes as a self-organized system. He observes that 2 and 10 act as doublers, alternating between the doubling of prime numbers next to them and across. 3 multiplies itself through the system as a perfect square. It bounces from position 3 to 6 to 9 to 12. All multiples of 3 are found in these positions. Vortex math uses doubling, and it's in a triangle, like the Gurdjieff Enneagram is 9-3-6. Pythagoras grouped numbers as to patterns. For instance, the triangle is made up of triangular numbers. And you'll see that's 1, 3, 6, and 10. Vortex math also works for the Fibonacci series, as shown. Note that the Fibonacci sequence is the inner circle with its digits over 9, vortex reduced, and realizing that it repeats after every 24 numbers, giving 24 hours in a day. Vortex addition is then applied above and below to give the same vortex pattern 1, 5, 7, 8, 4, 2, 1, with 9 being at the top and bottom. It yields this beautiful spiral, both forward and backwards. In the next table of vortex numbers, all numbers are multiplied and then reduced, specified as RED, showing each number has its reverse twin. If you look at the linked statements in the top row, compared to the number being concerned, you'll see that 1 is linked to 8, 2 is linked to 7, 3 is linked to 6, 4 is linked to 5, 5 is linked to 4, 6 is linked to 3, 7 is linked to 2, and 8 is linked to 1. And this works for all of these numbers. So this shows that the vortex diagram can be divided into right and left. Positive is on the right and negative is on the left in this diagram. Since the Enneagram has a similar mirror image, we can surmise that it also has a positive and negative side. The action of the Enneagram can be considered to be of the spiritual realm and the vortex to be of the material realm, because the crossing point of the Enneagram is closer to God, Do, at the top, than the vortex, which serves the physical body and is lower down. Also, the vortex follows the side tracks, and the Enneagram takes shortcuts and returns back like the peaks and troughs of a wave, which allows it to cross at a higher point. The influence of the triangle points at 3 and 6 are similar in both systems. In vortex math, 6 and 3 swap places continuously. In the Enneagram, the triangle influence is important to help bridge the two discontinuities of me and Fa and Sol and La, as both system lines of each are in opposition. Incidentally, this supports the symmetrical action at Sol and La instead of the expected discontinuity between Ti and Do, which is further discussed in the first lecture on the food octave. In the next figure, we see the Enneagram's mirrored nature. What is amazing is the affinity of me and La to the triangle at 6 and 3. So the logic of this diagram is that each note has an active and a passive and a neutral sense, so that 1, if proceeding forward, would be 1, 4, 2. Re at 1, I'm calling 1 its active nature, 4 its passive nature, and 2 its neutral nature. And I add up these three numbers and I get a 7. So I'm saying that the affinity of 1 is to 7. And I do this for all of the notes or numbers. What is amazing in this diagram is the affinity of me and La to the triangles 6 and 3. Next, let us study the relationships of the notes using vortex math. This table derives the Hertz values of the circle of fifths using the basis numbers that created the vortex diagram previously. The first column of the table is derived by dividing by 2. So 1 divided by 2 is equal to 0.5. Divide by 2 again, and you have 0.25. If you add up the two digits, 2 plus 5 equals 7. We're calling that 7. And then dividing by 2 again, we have 0.125. Adding up the digits, we have 8. The next number, dividing by 2 again, is 0.0625. We add up the digits, and we come up with 4. And then below the 1 are the digits that are multiplied by 2. Those are the ones in the original vortex diagram. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. Multiplying again, 32 times 2 is 64. That's 6 plus 4 equals 10 equals 1. And that's how they start repeating again. Amazingly, to derive the note C, if we follow the numbers multiplied by 2 unreduced, you'll find that there is the frequency of C, the famous 256 C that is known in physics. To get each note from that, we multiply each note by 3. And in this case, the notes start going up in a diagonal direction, as you see by the yellows. You will see that the green note 432 is the correct A, not 440, which is now the standard. And this was achieved by taking the vortex number 7 was 16, multiplied by 3, multiplied by 3, by 3. You'll notice in this diagram, all the values in the C column reduce to the vortex number. As we see, 5, 12, add the digits, it's 8. So the next column, where we derived G, we multiplied the numbers in the left column by 3. And you'll note that all of the numbers will either come up as a 3 or a 6. This is symbolic of the 3-6 triangles in the vortex. In the rest of the notes, we continue multiplying by 3. And each one of these numbers will reduce to 9, no matter how big they are. In this derivation of the frequencies, we did them in the order of C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, and then F. And let's listen to their values on the keyboard next. We can put them around in the circle of fifths, which is interestingly the same order that we did derive them. The black number is the frequency that we derived, and you see how exact it is. And then below it is the standard orchestral frequency in red. The parentheses number in the black shows you what number it resolves to in vortex math, and the number next to the red ones show you what octave the number is in. So, by moving the notes to their normalized respective places and giving a direction based on the order of derivation, in the vortex music table, the circle of fifths order, with green lines representing positive energies, full notes, initiated by Do, C to Sol, G, and the red lines representing negative energies, half notes, ending in Fa, F to Do, C. And here is the table, and you can see the green lines being the whole notes, and the red lines being the half notes. And of interest here is that the green lines, you can follow them through and they all end up at B, and from B they turn into sharps and flats. And then they come around again and they end at F, and then F goes back to C. If you try to play these on the piano, all these triads are suspended chords, but their relationships reveal other influences, which we will investigate. The positive energies, Do 9, influences Sol, which influences Re, which influences La, which influences Mi, which influences Ti. The negative energies, Ti influences the space between Sol and Fa, which influences the space between Do and Re, which influences the space between Sol and La, which influences the space between Re and Mi, which influences the space between La and Ti. Note that T is the joining point of the positive and negative energies on its return back through Fa, on its return to Do. Now what we're going to do next is overlay the Gurdjieff anagram on top of the full notes. And there we can see that there are some places where the notes are opposite to the direction of the enneagram, and some places that they enforce the direction of the enneagram. And these two places actually where they are opposed and supported are the ones that will be the laurels of the devil and the angel in our final diagram. The line E, Mi to B, T from 7 natural notes of the 12-note diagram above reinforces one line of the enneagram, while line D, Re, and A, La is being opposed by the enneagram line. Then we can compare these functions to the corrected food octave from lecture 1. And you see the food octave that we came up in lecture 1. Re was digestive system, stomach. Mi was circular system, liver. Fa was nervous system, cerebellum. Sol, thinking center, was cerebrum. These had been swapped from what Gurdjieff had shown. And then La is the endocrine system, the hormones, and in parentheses the heart. And that was the vibration that was left out in the food octave by Gurdjieff. And then the final one is the reproductive system and the sex organs. So here is the triumph of our whole study that has been very lengthy and difficult. The devil is on the right, using the negative energy of matter, in opposition to the angel on the left, using the positive influence of spirit. The unopposed path, me to T, is the devil taking the energy from the food in the stomach, powered by the nerve system cerebellum, and sending it out from the liver and the bile and the blood to the sex center, thus fulfilling the purpose of life to procreate. The opposed path is the angel's path, from Re to La, and it is overcome by the musical path that draws energy from the food in the stomach to join the sexual energy that is powered by the cerebrum and combining with the endocrine system of the heart's higher blood to form the Kesjanian body and soul. These paths cross at a place lower than Do, which we'll call God, which is the human form of God, as indicated by the crossed laurels. This is the place of the holy planet Purgatory, where souls must learn what the higher Do is. The two unrelated musical vectors, A La to E Me and G Soul to D Re, show that one should guard against hormonal energy being dissipated in the liver and the spleen, and the cerebrum being too attached to material food instead of the spiritual. And you will notice that the cerebellum and the cerebrum are related but opposite, with the cerebrum supporting the Kesjanian body and the soul. And there it is. We began with a symbol that is the symbol of Gurdjieff, which was a very unique figure, but it didn't give us much insight about the law of Heptaparapashanak, the law of 7, or the law of 3. But now we have a better understanding of how it works and why it truly is perpetual motion. And like that angel and devil in our previous diagram, doing the pas de Dieu, we need to think of the Enneagram as being something similar to that, where the angel and the devil, the positive and the negative, are constantly pushing back and forth between the notes of the octave that represents our human body. And from this struggle of angel and devil, we get to grow a Kesjanian body and a soul. Thank you for struggling through all these difficult equations and formulas. I think that it really was worthwhile.